new way to serve your customers and preserve your income. Are these recent restrictions, do they have you feeling limited and maybe even a little bit lost? Are you ready to look at some new ideas and see if you can adapt them for your own business? Well, if that's true, well, today's show is for you. Hello, folks. I'm Jeff Sieh, and I'm here with my super awesome co-host, Alisa Meredith. We are so happy to have you guys on. If you would add your comments during the show today, we will try to pull up as many of those as you can, as we can. Not you. That would be awkward. But we are very excited to be joined again by Tailwind CEO and co-founder Danny Maloney. Now, there is a worksheet that we want to make sure that you guys check out today. It is, let me pull that up real quick. It's bit.ly/TW Survive and Thrive. So we would love for you guys to check that out. It's bit.ly/TW Survive and Thrive. So Danny, it's so awesome to have you here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I was appreciating your Tailwind swag there.
My mug?
A little, yeah, it's beautiful.
I love this mug. It's nice. It has a cork bottom, so I don't have to worry about how hard I put it down.
Yeah, when you get really dramatic, you like slam it down and coffee goes over. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Alisa, kick us off. What do we? I mean, this is a kind of it's continuing in our Survive and Thrive series, which we've been doing and we'll continue to do as we kind of all navigate through these kind of unknown times, I guess. So, give us kind of the overview of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. So I think a lot of businesses are in the situation now where they feel like either their business or their product or even just their method of delivery just doesn't feel relevant or even possible sometimes in this current climate where everyone's stay at home. And you just can't get out that much. So we put together kind of a framework, and that worksheet that you mentioned at TW Survive and Thrive, that bit.ly link, will walk you through that framework. But we're going to do that with you, covering those aspects of the framework. And then we're going to look at quite a few examples of different industries and how you could creatively pivot through that. Then we're going to cover the Tailwind Relief Program. And finally, we are going to interview Tailwind's own Chief of Staff, Elena Walker, because she has a very personal pivot story to share. And I'm excited to hear how she pulled that off very quickly, too. So we know it's possible. Cool. And we're just hoping to kind of inspire people and get people excited about the possibilities. Because I feel like sometimes if you're in this situation where you're seeing your revenue go down, starting to panic a little bit, it's hard to get in that creative mindset. So I think the three of us are going to try to get people there.
Gotcha.
Trying to guide you through it.
Gotcha. Very, very cool. So let's go ahead and talk about this, this first, kind of a framework for pivoting. So go ahead and kick us off with that first question, Alisa. Well, I'm still pushing buttons here. So.
Okay, push some buttons. All right. So the first thing to think about, and it's in that worksheet, is what is it that you give your customers? It's not just food on a plate, right? What needs do you fill? Is it a need for socialization? Is it a need for saving time? What exactly is that need? And that's, I think, the first thing to really nail down.
So, Danny, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's critical. And a lot of times you might even find that different types of customers might have different needs that you fulfill. So I know this is something that we've seen with Tailwind, for instance, that we have different types of customers within our member base, and some of them value very different things, right? Some are very traffic oriented, some are much more sales and revenue oriented, some are really predominantly interested in saving time and making their workflows more efficient. And it's really important, I think, to the extent you can, to understand those needs, because they will change over time. Sometimes they change over time for an individual customer, but during a period like this, with everything going on in the world, those needs are probably shifting much faster than they normally would. And so, this is definitely the right place where I would start.
So that begs the question. So maybe, how do you find out what your customers' needs are? I think that's one of the things that we really didn't talk about is like, okay, we all know things have changed, but what kind of the mechanisms that, like you just mentioned, Tailwind, how did you know that the customer's needs changed? Is there a certain mechanism, or did you do a survey? How did you find that out?
Yeah. So, and I'll say even, going back in time, Tailwind is actually the result of two pivots. And so I won't go through the whole history lesson on our company and our business and where we evolved from. But we went through earlier iterations of the company where we were kind of hitting on some needs, but not as much. Right. And eventually we learned and got to a better place. And even then, since becoming Tailwind, I'd say there's been, every 6 to 12 months, there's either some new need that pops up in the market that we have to, roll with and adapt to so we can serve people better. But the main way that we really figure this out, to the extent possible, is talking to customers. And we try to do that as much as we possibly can. And asking questions that sometimes lead them to tell us really hard, uncomfortable things, right? Because people don't want to tell you things like, oh, your product doesn't quite meet my needs the way it used to. That can be a really awkward thing to say,
Right.
or even saying it in different ways. But kind of guiding them there and making it okay to give the hard feedback, because what you want to learn is, where is it not connecting? Where are you getting it wrong at the moment, so that you can get it right in the future?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's crucial right now, especially because once you identify in general what is it people need from you, then you have to ask, have those needs changed? And they probably have.
Right. Right.
A lot
For
of
everyone.
businesses right now, they've changed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this will all become a lot clearer when we start to go through each example. Like, what exactly does that mean? But yeah. So what would be the third question we would ask?
Sure. So once you have a sense of what the needs are and whether or not they're changing, another thing you might want to focus on is, why would someone generally choose you over other options, right? So all of us have competition out there, or most of us, and usually there are other options, whether it's direct competition or even just substitute products or processes that people can use instead of your product. And I think this question is really important for a couple of reasons in a time like this with a lot of change. One is to understand if the needs are changing, or even the hierarchy of needs is changing. Will people begin favoring a different product or a different approach as a result of that? And can you adapt to serve where they are? But the other thing is, if you have some really core strengths that people love about your brand, about your business, about your team, whatever it might be, you also want to hold on to and lean into those strengths to the extent that it still
Yes.
makes sense with the shifting needs. So you don't want to lose sight of what is good and what really defines you, just because
Right.
there's a lot of change going on.
Yeah. Could not agree more. So then we talked about how people's needs have changed, but I think something we might even be more familiar with is what is it that's made it difficult for us to meet those needs today? So is it a matter of delivery? Is it a matter of our product not feeling relevant? Is it like a downstream effect that's making our product not feel affordable? Like what is the challenge that we have to overcome at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is where I think some of the change might be accelerated, right? Because there are fundamental changes in society going on, the way
Yeah.
we act, the way we are living our lives. So there might be new barriers or difficulties that we have to work around in order to maintain viability for our business.
Right.
So I was going to
So,
ask.
okay.
Sorry, Alisa, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, please go.
One of the questions I wanted to ask was, during this time, you mentioned change is going to happen, and we can't see a crystal ball. Should we already start putting, I guess, feelers out, or should we even try to predict what the future is going to hold? I guess is the question I had.
I think the less you are predicting and the more that you are listening, the better, right? It's really difficult to predict because all of us really only have our own view of the world. But that's why I think, again, talking to as many customers as possible or getting feedback from them, if you really can't talk to customers, then sure, tools like surveys could be helpful. But there's a lot of value that can happen in a conversation and really understanding the depth and the detail behind why a customer feels the way that they feel.
Yeah.
And as you have those conversations, as you gather insights from them and you hear what the needs are, you're not really predicting anymore, right? Like at that point, you actually have the signals that are going to tell you, okay, these are the changes that are happening. And then you don't have to guess, right? So like the more you're not guessing in a time like this, the better.
Gotcha. That's a great point.
Yeah. Okay, so we've identified what needs we fill, how they've changed, why people choose us over someone else. What is the challenge to meeting those needs today? So then where the pivot comes in is, what can you change to meet the greatest needs of your customers right now? And I think that's the part that we're all kind of here for, is like, how do we make this pivot? Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that we even are doing more of these shows. I mean, that's a way that Tailwind has pivoted, because all this stuff it fits into communicating with our audience and people who buy the product and all that stuff. And so, I mean, it didn't take a lot to do that. You just added it to the calendar. And so I think thinking about what the lowest hanging fruit is that you can accomplish and pivot really quickly to talk to your clients, or I've seen everybody going live. I mean, they have, because it's working, because that's the only way we can communicate, a lot of us right now. And if you have an international or a national company that serves all across the nation, it's a great way to do that. So I think that's an example that we've all seen lately on that kind of pivot.
I mean, it works, it's available, but I think there's also a much greater demand for it right now, where people, if they are at home working and they're not essential workers going out, which we really feel for them as well. But if people do have a bit more time, or maybe they're looking at, well, maybe this is a good time to start my dream business I always wanted to start and never had time. So people are looking for this information, or maybe they're struggling to keep a business afloat. So like knowing what people need right now enables you to make those pivots too.
And I think just sharing some of the behind the scenes here with our own situation, right? If we look back to a few weeks ago, when the COVID situation especially started ramping up in the US, right? That was when within Tailwind, we started having a lot more customer conversations. And I personally sent out a note to our customers, which, if you were on the live a couple of weeks ago, I think we might have flashed that up quickly. But just ask people, how is this impacting you? Will you share your story? Tell us what you're worried about, what your concerns are. And from those conversations, from hearing it, one of the big things that I heard was, I don't know how to navigate this situation, right? So it was kind of flagging a new need to us, which isn't necessarily, right? Like generally running a small business is probably a much broader topic than we would typically cover on our Facebook Lives and on our educational series. But it was so clear and apparent that need was there, that the Survive and Thrive series that we're on now and that we're doing weekly was really born out of that insight of, okay, people are really feeling like they need that help right now. And we have expertise within the team, within our community, within our networks that we can bring to them. So let's do it, right? Like, let's help out however we can. We didn't necessarily have to entirely change who we are as a business, right? But beauty pivot is, you keep one foot in the present, but then you turn in a new direction somewhere, right? So in this case, we're pivoting a bit in the type of content that we're discussing, the type of education that we're providing by broadening it, but we're not fundamentally changing everything that lies underneath about our business.
Yeah.
Great points.
Okay, so the last step in our framework is going to be setting the stage for the ultimate return to business as better than usual. So that's going to kind of form the basis for our examples. I think we should jump right into some examples and later talk about how to promote our new offer. Does that sound good?
Yeah, but I also want to make sure people who are joining in will make sure they go and get this the guide that you guys have put together at bit.ly/TW Survive and Thrive. That's bit.ly/TW Survive and Thrive. And also, I see a lot of questions coming up. We are going to get to those, especially like when we start talking about some examples later on in the show. So we're not ignoring you. I wanted to get through this first part. I want to make sure people knew that. Yeah, so we will bring up some of those questions as we go along the show today. So, okay, let's go to.
And if I can,
go ahead.
Jeff, if I can just throw it out there, you might have noticed as we're doing this series each week that we're creating these kind of like free worksheets and free downloadables. And just to share once again the idea behind that, we know that everyone's business is unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
The exact solution for your business is going to be heavily dependent on who you are, what your capabilities are, what your strengths are, what your assets are. And so we want to address a lot of the concepts as we talk through today and generally as we go through this series. But we know that ultimately everyone sort of has to take that back, think through it on their own, process it, and come to your own answer as to what makes sense for your business. So we hope that these tools will help you in doing that. But just wanted to share, that's why we're putting these out there as we go each week.
Yeah, I think another key thing to keep in mind is that, here are some ideas. There are no guarantees, and maybe none of these would work for you. But there are other things available. We've talked in previous Survive and Thrive Facebook Lives about grants that are available, about loans, benefits that can help keep your business afloat until things get better. And so we realize that may be what you decide to do for an option, and that's fine too. But we just wanted to present some alternatives, some creative ideas to maybe do it a little differently.
Yeah. All right.
Next so section. Let's start with bloggers.
Yes. So
bloggers. We talk to a lot of bloggers.
Yes. So I want to know what you guys. So what's some of that advice that you give those bloggers to do? I mean, so what we talked a little bit like what is that you give your customers? I mean, what are you serving and what needs do you fill? So do you have some examples of that?
Well, I mean, we do, but I wanted to think about it from the perspective as someone who is a blogger. Mm-hmm. So I decided to choose what I thought might be the hardest vertical of all. And, the one that is really challenged right now. And that's the travel industry.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. It's just not something that people can do right now, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So, Susan at Tailwind sent me this great link, and it's effietalkslife.com. It's EFFY talkslife.com, and I'll share that link in the Facebook comments. But she just happened to have written a blog post about how travel bloggers can maintain their blog in this time, which was really impressive and also a great way to pivot and respond to people's needs in the moment. So just thinking about, as a travel blogger, like, what is it that you give your customers? What needs do you fill? So what do you think that might be?
Well, the people, their audience, I'll just throw this out there, is their audience was people who love to travel. And that travel, those people right now are hurting because they're one of their most favorite things they can do, they can't do. So I would think about having how to fill that need, like right now, because everybody's stuck where they're at. How can you help scratch that itch that those people have? So I want to throw this. I think I talked about this last time. I always use him, but Lou Mangello, who does Walt Disney World Radio. He's an old school OG podcaster. He's been around forever, but he nobody can go to where his business is. I mean, Disney World is shut down, and he works with a lot of travel people. But he has activated his community. He does these Wednesday night lives where they call in, they can ask them questions, they can share their favorite things, the recipes that they make of Disney parks food. They do. One family made Pirates of the Caribbean at home where they pulled their kid through on a sled and they had their own ride and they shared that kind of stuff. So he's meeting a need of his audience, and I think of that when I think of travel because they can't go there. But he's enabled them to still gather around the thing they love. And I think travel bloggers should look at that example and think, okay, what can I do to really, activate my community? Because that's what we have is the community. I mean, right now. Yeah. And so that's what I think of when I think of travel.
Awesome.
And I think wearing my business hat, I think when you think about bloggers, there's ultimately really two audiences that bloggers are serving, right? There's the audience who's consuming the content, who is getting inspiration, who's getting advice, who's helping plan a trip, in this case, maybe for travel bloggers. And then there's the monetization side, which might be partnerships with brands. It might be affiliate relationships. It might be advertisers. And obviously, some of those revenue streams are deeply right now, right? If people can't travel, and let's say you're generating a lot of revenue through affiliate relationships, you're almost certainly going to see that portion of revenue go away. And I've gotten to talk to quite a few in the last few weeks, and One thing I'll throw out there that I really admired and respected about what I heard from folks is we know that some of that revenue is going to be gone for the time being. That doesn't necessarily mean that my business isn't worth building anymore, because the day when travel will come back, when those revenue streams will be viable again. And so they're kind of shifting to, okay, what can I do in the meantime to prepare my business to be as strong as possible, knowing that, sometimes that's not going to pay the bills in the near term. And that's where things like, the government subsidy programs and loans and so forth can be really helpful to bridge that gap. But I saw a lot of folks being really proactive, and I thought that wonderful. I could seeing that you can invest in what you can invest in now. You can engage your community, maintain those relationships, build your brand for the future, even if the monetization ultimately comes later.
That's great.
Yeah. So, and I think that's kind of what that article was talking about too. Like, it's impossible for them to get everything that they need from you today, as far as helping plan a trip. It's just really hard to do that right now. But if you ask people what their needs are, so chances are you're probably on Instagram. People are on Instagram. So ask, and then think about, like Danny said, investing in the future, because this travel will come back. So try updating your popular content and resharing it, creating new pins for content that's still relevant and up to date. Get on Pinterest. So searches and saves and clicks on Pinterest right now are at all-time record highs. So while people may not be searching for like a certain destination, like planning a trip, they may be thinking about like travel essentials, or maybe 10 places you should see before you die. That kind of like longer term, broader topic might be what to focus your time on right now.
Yeah. And we got a great
I can imagine.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I don't want to cut off the comment.
I was going to say, this is from Samantha. She goes, I'm not selling many jeans at the moment. So but she's pivoted to be more of a creator and then selling off the back of that. So I thought was a good example of someone who has pivoted, and it's not selling, it's not going out the door, but I'm doing this now. And so I think that's Samantha. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, real good.
So I was just going to add in there that, Alisa, something you said really triggered me there, was just people might not be searching to plan for a specific destination or a specific trip. And I think that's right. That said, for myself, within our family and even just friends, folks on the Tailwind team, I do see a lot of folks who are looking to live vicariously beyond their apartment or house, right? And so while people might not be searching out planning that trip as much as they normally would, I can imagine that there is room for inspiration, that people are welcome to having that break in their day to think about something happy or calmer or whatever it might be that the sensation that a given destination might give you. So I could see repurposing content right now. I could see positioning it differently. I could see in some cases people might, depending on how much content you have and your own footage or video you have, maybe doing some types of like premium content offerings that are a bit more immersive, assuming you have the time to be able to edit it and put it together. But I could see consumption patterns changing in that way, and probably even more so as people settle into this new normal of life at home, that as the shock wears off, we might start dreaming again a bit more.
Right. Well, I do
know it's funny.
I do know that Oculus Rifts, the VR headsets and all that, are sold out for months because of the exact reason is you can't find one right now because everybody wants to travel vicariously. So if you can think of a way to, to add that to your content, like what Danny was just saying, I think that would be a long-term thing. But Alisa, you had mentioned Instagram before. So how would you use that? You had some ideas, I know, about, you talked about getting on Pinterest, but on Instagram, which is super popular, what are some ideas that you were thinking about that?
I was thinking about Instagram mainly for maintaining that connection with your customers, and then leaning into what we know they want. Like, so first ask, but then I'm looking at Pinterest at trends.pinterest.com, and I know we looked at this a couple weeks ago. We looked at the term travel, and I'm looking at it again, and what I'm seeing is that the searches for travel are not at an all-time low right now. But things like travel outfit, quotes, destinations, travel, tattoo, and traveling are way, way down. Whereas what Danny was saying, things like travel photography, like things that allow us to live vicariously, are way up. So that to me is an indication that he's onto something where maybe that's what you share on Instagram right now. Like keep people enjoying that feeling of that travel, and make sure you're thinking about it. Why did people love my content before when they could plan? Was it because I pointed out really cool places no one knew about? Was it my sense of humor? Like what was that? And really lean into that even more now when you're just trying to maintain that connection with people.
Yeah, and we have some great comments here I wanted to pull up from Brent. Yeah. He says this. He goes for an idea: online virtual Zoom tours via 360 photography. So that's a great idea. That kind of virtual tour would also work for realtors. I know people, you may not be able to go to an open house right now, but you could sure go with all the technology and tools they have right now to tour some. And so when that is lifted, you can go and do some of that. So I know a lot of local realtors here are doing this. And also Lorena says this. She goes, I love how Airbnb pivoted and now are offering digital experiences versus homes. So I thought that was a great example as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think some of the things we'll talk about more specific to influencers, talk about how to try to keep some of that income coming in from brands as well. But I think for bloggers and for influencers too, the most important thing right now is going to be to deepen that connection when people are really craving connection more than ever. So just really focus on that.
And if I can throw out one other piece that's been on my mind about bloggers in particular. So we posed the question, but said we would get into it as we talk to examples around what can you do to set the stage for the ultimate return to business as usual or even better in most cases. And I might take some heat for saying this, but in working with a lot of bloggers over recent years, talking to them about their businesses and understanding where they're at, I think a trend that I've seen, which I can't necessarily prove, maybe we could do some research around it, is that the folks in the blogging world who are generally doing better from a financial perspective have created their own monetizable assets over time, right? So you have the traditional revenue streams of ads and affiliate relationships and brand partnerships, which can be very lucrative over time as well. The challenge with those is they can be highly cyclical, and in recessions, a lot of those channels can be hurt simultaneously. But a lot of bloggers have been creating, whether it's their own courses, their own guides, their own premium content experiences, premium services that they offer, their subscription tribe or premium community offering, even branded products that they sell in order to expand their brand and expand the reach of their business over time. Generally, they've become less dependent on the swings in advertising and affiliate revenue over time. And a lot of them actually just make more money in the first place, right? Because sometimes you can build repeat buyers, repeat customer bases, or even subscription models that enable you to just build your passive income over time as those assets continue to be monetized. So right now, I think there might be a period of time for folks in various verticals of blogging, not just travel, to take some of this time and say, okay, do I see opportunities where I can create some of my own monetizable assets that I will own for the long term that I can sell? And will that actually improve my business model? Not only maybe now, if I can generate some near-term revenue, but at a minimum, I can develop those now, get them to market. And then when the market swings back up, I'll be ready to sell and I'll be ready to generate more revenue than I might otherwise.
I think that's a great
That's
point.
so funny. Jeff, you and I were talking about that just earlier today about, like, is this the time to be selling? And my argument is that if people are going to use what you have to increase their own income, then you should also be making income off of it. And that doesn't mean being tone deaf and selling a $20,000 mastermind to someone who's struggling. But it might mean starting with a mini course. Mm-hmm. I just bought a $39 painting course. And this is like the perfect time for that kind of thing. And especially where it comes to building someone's business. That's the way to go. So like Danny said, if you start like that, and then when things start to turn around, who is it they go to for a course or advice? It's you, because they met you at this time when they really needed you.
That's a great point. And we actually interviewed last week, so it's a great one to go back and watch, is Holly Homer, who actually has done that. And we were talking specifically about Pinterest and Facebook working together, but she has built her brand and has done what kind of Danny has said. She started out a certain way as a blogger, but then she started selling some other things, and then that led to other things. And so now that she has all these kind of diversified places of income, she doesn't get hit as hard as some of the other places. And she was actually saying she has had more traffic now than, hardly. Some of these bloggers are getting more traffic now than ever before because they have built that up and people are searching for things and there's more time to read and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really interesting. Let's go ahead and move on to, but don't forget our, the downloadable that we have for this week at TW Survive and Thrive, that you can find that at bit.ly/TW Survive and Thrive. Can't talk today, but we're going to talk kind of on the piggyback on what Danny was talking about e-commerce, because this is an interesting one, Danny. So, I mean, you're in the middle of this, so kind of tell us how this is being affected.
Sure. And if you were on the live that I did with y'all a couple weeks back, you might have seen the data that showed as of mid-March, we were actually seeing a spike in e-commerce spending overall, and that some categories were leading that while others were actually declining. So if you think about what was happening in the world, people were setting up their home offices. They were buying more comfortable pants to wear at home. They were stocking up on groceries and essentials, right? So we kind of went through that phase. And I think that we're starting to see that calm down a bit, right? So we're coming back to a new normal here. And now the question is, okay, category by category, niche by niche, what's going on? And so in e-commerce, I see kind of two different sets of trends happening. And I apologize because e-commerce is such a broad category that you almost have to analyze it niche by niche, but I'll do my best to talk to it overall. So first is the niche specific trend, and we can give a couple examples there where a very specific part of the e-commerce market is being impacted in a very specific way, creating certain pivot opportunities. The second is broad changes across categories that might help people think about how to reframe their e-commerce offering overall and some new tactics you might use. So starting on the niche side, one example, and this is one that's hitting me very personally, teachers pay teachers sellers, right? Or people who sell class style educational materials and exercises have seen a huge shift, right? Teachers are generally not at work. Most schools are closed down, and teachers are buying fewer materials than in the past. But there's actually this entire new market now that has opened. And I hear a number of sellers saying they're already seeing orders of parents, right? So parents who are looking for materials and activities that they can do with their kids now that we're put in a position to homeschool that we never expected we were going to be put in if we weren't already homeschooling our children. And so, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter, and she's home from school now. I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm sure I understand the concepts that her pre-K class is trying to teach, but honestly, I stare at some of these exercises with a lot of anxiety for 5, 10, 15 minutes because I want to teach it the right way. I want to make sure she's getting the education she's supposed to get. And it led me to thinking, okay, if I could just have videos for some of these resources, or I could have maybe clearer instructions, clearer tutorials, if I was looking at 2 or 3 different options of which resource to buy, and one of them was paid and the others were free, but the paid one came with better instructions or a video showing me in 2 minutes how to teach this exercise, I would go with the paid one all day long because I want my daughter to have the best education possible, as long as it's a reasonable, fair price, right? And so there might be an opportunity there in rethinking the tactics around how to package and frame the offering that still makes it viable to sell, even if it's into a new audience in the first place.
Yeah, we were talking right about before the show as well, Alisa and I, because my wife's a teacher and she's had to make the switch to teach from home. And so I'm like I'm the tech support person now. So I was like, there's no better person to be quarantined with. Yeah.
I know. I wish I could send you to my friend's house. They're ESL students too, so it's like,
Hmm.
and the parents don't speak much English, and it's like trying to. Wow, we
Right.
could really use some help. There's a lot people are dealing with. I got an example from Jennifer Priest the other day, and if you want to check them out, they're on Etsy, SoCal Etsy Guild. So they typically have a market that you go to, and people can bring their Etsy products and sell them there. But of course, they
Hmm.
can't do that now. But they have turned their Instagram account into like a virtual auction. So
Hmm.
they're able to still get their guild fees so they can keep their business open and support the Etsy sellers that depend on them for promotion. It's just a real clever little pivot that they did.
Yeah, and I want to bring up a comment from Jackie while you get the next section ready, Lisa.
Yeah.
As she goes, foodie here, trying to be resourceful as we don't sell fresh, but can help with everyday meal solutions. And my daughter
Perfect.
was just telling me today about this person on Snapchat that she follows, that is all they're doing is teaching how to cook what's in your cabinet. And she goes, they don't even measure things, Dad. They use how to use a can to measure this much flour and all this stuff. And but
That's
it's
awesome.
genius that they're leaning into this stuff and teaching a
Yeah.
real need right now. And like Jackie's saying here, she's, we're trying to be resourceful. She doesn't sell fresh, but she can help with this same kind of thing, making these everyday meal solutions. So I think that's a great
Yeah.
example. Thank you, Jackie.
Yourself on Instagram, on Pinterest, searches for freezer meals are up to 2.5x right now.
Yeah.
People are making bread like crazy because there isn't any to buy. Yeah,
Right.
so lean into that. So one I really wanted to make sure we got to, and any that we don't get to here, I'm going to share in the comments and we'll work into the blog post too. But one that we really want to talk about was influencers.
Hmm.
So thinking about influencers, they really have two people or two different sets of people that they serve. The needs they fill for their audience might be ideas and inspiration with maybe like a side of entertainment. And for brands, they are dependent on to build awareness. So we're going to talk like we're a cosmetic influencer. Jeff, you ready for that?
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm all about that. I'm all about,
I
that's my
knew
market,
it.
baby. Yeah.
Well, you know what's funny though? Just because we're staying home doesn't mean that we don't care what we look like. I Pinterest is saying that home haircut searches are up 5x.
Yes, I preach it. Yeah, I need a
How
haircut so
many of
bad.
those searches are you, Jeff?
They're all me. Yeah.
They're all you. Yeah. So, but I mean, have those needs changed? Yeah. Like your audience needs more entertainment and encouragement and amusement than they ever did. And brands, they still need to build awareness, but they're less likely to want to reach out with to people they haven't worked with before. And that's what really makes it hard to increase your revenue. So for this section, I talked to Chloe, who's on the Tailwind team. She is also an influencer in her own right, and she had some really great ideas. So again, figure out like what is it that why do people choose you? So for her, she has really beautiful pictures and cute and quirky and sweet captions. Hope I'm not embarrassing her here, but thinking about like what has made it difficult to meet the needs of your audience and the brands you work with. So the audience, no, not really too much difficulty meeting them. They really want you right now. They're on social looking for distraction and something fun. But for the brands, they're having budget cuts and
Mhm.
they're not really wanting to try somebody new. So her suggestion was to go back to what it was that gained your audience in the first place and lean into that. And then thinking about working with brands, like go back to people you've worked with before. Like don't think about your dream brand right now if
Right.
you haven't worked with them before. It's not the time. But really go back to the brands you've already loved to work with in the past and maybe offer them a really good deal on a sponsored post or two over the next couple of months. Because that's really going to deepen that relationship and they will appreciate that concession when it's time for them to start spending more.
Yeah, I think also I would add this is like, because we have a lot of people who have businesses and brick and mortars and restaurant owners, and I'm seeing all those in the comments, um, is that become, you may not have the money or the budget to hire an influencer, or it may not make sense, but become your own influencer. Let them see behind the company. If you're a restaurant owner and never let them see how you make something, give away one of your recipes. Teach them, like
Oh, yes.
who was it the other day was showing how to make. Oh, it was Disney. It was Disney World. They were
Dole
showing how to make
Whip.
their famous Dole Whip that everybody raves about. They did that, and I mean, they didn't have to do that. There's another. Gosh, what was it? Not Smash Burger. It was one of those big burger chains. They're actually giving boxes and teaching people how to make those flavors, and even selling some of their seasoning for you guys to make it at home. And so, so you could become your own influencer. Don't be scared to turn on the camera. I mean, this is the time, like everybody's doing it. You might as well try it. I mean, become your own influencer.
Most of us are not professional
Yeah.
broadcasters, but people love it. And there's another tip from Chloe was to expand to new platforms. So if you've got Instagram figured out and it's working for you, that's awesome. But expand. Maybe you have a little more time now. You're maybe not doing as many sponsored posts. Get onto YouTube, start blogging, and that way you'll be more available for more partnerships. And then I know Danny had some thoughts too about other ways to expand too. So I'll let you go there.
Yeah, and this is coming more from the brand perspective. If you put yourself in the shoes of the brand you're working with, Alisa, you said something really important as an assumption there of brands are not looking to work with new influencers that they don't know. And unpacking the psychology of that right now, I think there are really a couple of things going on. One is budget cuts, right? So as brands cut back on their own marketing budgets, want to make every dollar they spend is going to go further, and they want to increase the probability that that's going to happen, right? So when your budget gets cut, a miss on a campaign or a failure hurts a lot more because it's taking budget out of a smaller pool that could have gone somewhere else. But the other really big factor there is the risk right now. Mm-hmm. And where I see a lot of brands having really difficult debates and not really knowing how to proceed is they don't know how to talk to people in a time like this in a way that's safe, that's not going to come across as overly salesy, that's not going to be tone deaf, that is not going to end up creating a PR nightmare for their communications team during an already difficult time. And so one way I think influencers can differentiate themselves is first being aware of that, right? Being aware that that risk is very real for brands and educating yourself a bit, if you don't already understand, on how to mitigate that risk while still creating good, inspiring, engaging content that's going to land. That might even mean changing some of your creative practices a bit and how you think about what is on-brand or off-brand content in a way that's on-brand for the current situation. And then educating the brands on it, right? Like this could be a service, it could be a consulting offering that you provide them, or it could just be a relationship builder where if you can present a really clear perspective on this is how you can still speak to your audience, your customers in this time, that might open the door for you to new relationships, or at least re-engage the relationships you already have. It may even be one of those products or services you can sell, right? So back to the theme from the blogger discussion of building your own monetizable assets. There may be something there that you can offer to brands right now, which is different from purely influence, but it's more education and helping them learn how to get through them in their own right.
That's awesome. Yeah. I want to bring up two comments. The first one, because I think it's always important to highlight success stories. And this, Linda has a great one. She goes, I'm in a craft business. I've changed from face-to-face classes to offering online classes. Did my first one this past week, sent out physical supplies by post and emailed a private video link with a how-to YouTube tutorial. Had a great response and some awesome orders. My April sales are up. I'm super surprised, but I'm so pleased. So I think that's awesome. Thank you, Linda, for sharing that win for us, because I think that's encouraging and gives some people some ideas about things. And so that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do want to bring up a question from Lorena, because we're going to kind of talk about restaurants next, and this has something to do with that. It says, what do you suggest for coffee shops? Because I consider that a restaurant. So even though their own little thing, but what would you suggest for a coffee shop and some ideas for restaurants?
I think that the first thing is the most important thing to think about. What is the need you're actually filling? Because it's not coffee, right? Because you can get coffee anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think thinking about is it the atmosphere? Is it the connection? And I think that would be similar for bars and restaurants too. So maybe it's like fun with family and friends, good food, no cooking or cleanup, good music. So those needs have not changed, right? And maybe they choose you because you play the best music and you have the comfy couch. Maybe those are your differentiators. But obviously they cannot come and sit on your comfy couch and listen to your amazing music. So what can you change? It's going to have to be the delivery method.
Well,
right?
I have an idea for this. So, and I think I may have seen somebody do this, is go back to the same thing like Disney did with their Dole Whip. Teach people how to use a French press. Do a live video on that. Teach them how to use this, how to make the coffee, and then have them do a virtual coffee meetup. I mean, a lot of people are doing these virtual parties anyway. Have one behind your brand that you say, hey, listen, every Friday I'm going to do this. And if there's a local somebody that you've had come into your coffee shop and do music before or something, have them do a little concert live for inside of your Facebook group or something like that. Try to incorporate some of those things digitally that you might be able to, bring on a special guest, or, if you can, whatever, just think of some great ideas that you've already maybe done live, but do it virtually and see if you can maybe work that into it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And
go ahead, Alisa.
Okay. What I love about that too is it also gives you an opportunity to help them recreate it at home, but also keep some income coming in. So maybe, like, even if they never thought about how great your coffee beans were, maybe you make it part of like recreating the whole experience. So if you're a bar or restaurant, you have happy hour deals with wings and beer for pickup, right? And along with that comes a Spotify list of some of their favorite music. Maybe you could have a discount for ordering with friends. So like encouraging that social, maybe through a Zoom. Then you have curbside pickup. You can have online game suggestions, like anything you can do to kind of facilitate that feeling that is the reason why they come to your coffee shop or your restaurant. And just like remind them via social how much you miss them and can't wait to be together again. Talk about new menu items you've planned, like show what you're doing to try to recreate this feeling, and use user-generated content, I think, will be huge.
Yeah, Danny, you had a point too?
Yeah, I was thinking from a personal angle, and this might vary depending on the rules right now in your locale, right? So some coffee shops might be forced to be closed entirely. Others might be able to still operate, say, like a drive-through window, right? It really depends on where you are. But if I think about our local coffee shops, and what do I love about the ones that I do go to? The coffee's good, sure, but in a lot of cases, it's the staff. It's the owners who are just super friendly and have become friends. In some cases, it's the food. Honestly, a lot of the food at shops generally isn't what I'm going for, but I might pick up something sometimes anyway. But I could see angles here, even if you're forced to shut down, can you as the owner or you as a team with your staff put out fun, engaging content that's going to remind people like, oh yeah, I love these people. And the moment that they're open again, I'm going to want to get back in there and support them. Or maybe I'll even buy gift cards now, knowing that that day will eventually come. Another angle could be if you have the drive-through window. I mean, I still see people lining up at drive-throughs. I had to do our bi-weekly grocery shopping trip a couple days ago, and there was a 15-car line at a local coffee shop through the drive-through. The immediate thought was, okay, if I were in that line, if I were going to get coffee, I might as well buy some food while I'm there anyway, because I don't want to make an extra stop to get food if I don't have to. And if I want the convenience and I'm there anyway, it kind of minimizes versus going to another place. So maybe there's an angle there of like, while you're here, let's get some food as well. And maybe thinking about some bundles or packages or something you can do to encourage people to buy the food or try your food who might otherwise usually just get the coffee.
I think it's a great point. And I want to bring up some points here. Piggybacking off of your comment about Spotify, Jamila says this, she goes, or you could also have a Spotify playlist of the music that plays in your shop. That's a great idea. So I think that's awesome how to do it. And then Laura Patterson she's a friend of the show. She says how to break up with your coffee maker after realizing the past month it's not you, it's them. So very good. But I also want to do a shout out to our friend Neil Schaefer. Says, I finally made it to your live stream. Woohoo! Thank you for stopping by. And Laura goes, we have been waiting for you, Neil, all this time. So
All this time we can start the party.
yes. Thank you so much. He's an incredible speaker and author. Make sure you check him out. He's got a new book coming out. It's incredible. I was able to see him at Social Media Marketing World. So let me see. Amy has another comment about coffee. She says our local coffee shop's drive-through is open and they were giving out rolls of toilet paper with purchases.
Oh,
Genius. So I think that is very cool.
We had a donut shop in town that was doing the same thing. It's sort of like one of those specialty fancy donut places. And if you bought a dozen donuts, you would get a roll of toilet paper with it too.
That's awesome. And Neil has this. He says, my brother has a wine tasting room and has started virtual wine tastings, and he can ship wine. So that's his ROI. So that's a great idea.
Really smart.
That's awesome example there.
Yep.
So,
okay. We have 3 other examples, but we've kind of run out of time. So we're going to put the examples and our ideas into the comments because I want to give Danny a minute or 2 to talk about the Tailwind Relief Program. And then we're going to bring Elena on to give us her real life pivot.
Awesome.
Sure. So I'll be brief so you can get to Elena as quickly as possible. Just wanted to fill you all in on something that we're doing in case you haven't seen or heard about it already. It's just officially launching this week. We gave our members a heads up last week so that they could get in and apply early. But I mentioned earlier that while I was out talking to our members and understanding where education was one of the big needs that popped up, we want advice on how to get through this time. The other big one was obviously financial support. And so we took in a lot of advice there, and we ultimately said, okay, we've got to do everything in our power, even though we're a small company ourselves, to help the small businesses who we serve and who we live for every day, because we wouldn't be here as a company without them, right? Like, we are here to serve you, to serve them. So we decided to put together the Tailwind Small Business Relief Program. And what we're doing basically is giving away $1 million of free software. So we're doing the equivalent of 3 months of Tailwind Plus, which is typically $15 a month as a grant. And I know we've had a bunch of folks sign up already, which is awesome. I'm pumped to be able to get those out. And I think we're starting to get some of those grants out today, which is great. I'm really excited to see that. But it's a quick application online. If you go to tailwindapp.com/COVID, you can go ahead. And one other piece of it that I want to mention specifically that actually came from the member feedback, as we talked to folks, what we heard was sort of this sense of, not only am I experiencing difficulty right now because of what's going on in my own business, but I have a lot of friends and family and people in our communities, the coffee shop we love, whatever it might be, that I want to help. And there's this sense that, a sense of almost powerlessness because I can't help. I don't have the financial means to help them because of what's happening in my own business, but I want to do something. And so we decided to add an option, and it is an option. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, that when you apply, you can also nominate 3 other small businesses, up to 3. You could be 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever number you want, to also receive grants. And so our hope in this whole program basically is to help as many small businesses through this period as move the need to spend cash out of pocket right now while they're going through this until their businesses can reopen and reestablish themselves. And so like that's kind of number one is enable them if they're being impacted to get that financial relief. But the other thing we're hoping, obviously, is that by using the software, that folks will feel a multiplier effect, right? So, Tailwind's generally a pretty inexpensive product in the grand scheme of the world, but we hope that folks are going to be able to drive sales, drive traffic, engage with their community to just continue building those relationships in a way that will ultimately create much more value for them than the value of the grant itself. So that's what we're doing. We're really excited, again, to see folks applying. That said, if you want to apply, if you have a friend, a family member who you would want to apply or to get a grant, please do that as quickly as possible because they are coming in pretty fast. And there's really 2 sides of this. One is we might end up, pretty quickly going $1 million that we've budgeted for the program. But the other piece of it is, as a small team, we're going in the order the applications come in terms of processing them and getting grants out to people. So we're going to go as fast as we can, but just, being honest, like we don't know exactly how long it's going to take us because we've never done anything like this before. So please bear with us and be patient with us as we work through that. But we would love to have anyone and everyone participate who needs it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Danny, so much for being here and
Sure.
all your advice. And I'm sure we'll have you on again. And I think a lot of people are there's Laura says this, she goes, clap that up. So she says, thanks, Tailwind. Nicely done. So thank you, Laura, for saying that. So thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Laura.
And we're going to boot you off and get
All right.
another person on. So see you later.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Awesome. So so once again, I'll put the link for you guys to, if you want to apply. That's at grow.tailwindapp.com/COVID-19/relief-program. Man, okay, that's hard. I'm going to say that one more time for the podcast
you, right?
listeners. Yeah, it's grow.tailwindapp.com/COVID-19/relief-program. Yeah. We need a Bitly link for that, baby, I tell you.
We do.
Yeah.
And you know what we didn't really get to talk about is ways to promote your new pivot. But I think Elena's going to cover just about everything we could imagine. And then
we're still waiting for her to come
more.
on. But let's talk about our friend David Brandt, because he had a great pivot that we talked about. So he unfortunately had to shut down his business of 10 years, which was a studio where he had, they came in and he provided painting things and he taught painting classes and all that stuff. And so he recently pivoted to teaching online classes and then also delivering supplies locally. And he had a great, I think it's launching today, but he had like a pre-launch and he already sold a lot of stuff. So very good. So I think that was a great way of where he pivoted and really, he worked hard, but it seems to be working for him. So.
Yeah. And his was another one where it was a lot about the social experience. So I'm tempted to sign up, partly just because I like him and he's a great guy, and partly just to see how he's doing it. Because it was a place where people would go with groups of friends, and I think I'm pretty sure they had wine.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where we could all use a night in like that. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to go check
Painting
him out.
with drinking. Yeah. There you go.
Painting with drinking.
Elena.
Everything looks better when you have a glass of wine.
That's right.
Elena. Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Thanks for coming on. We're excited. And we just want to say that if children, dogs, or cats run through, it's no big deal. Cats are a bonus on this show.
Oh my gosh, you may regret saying that, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. So Elena is one of the working from home, trying to keep kids on track with school. Yeah. Yes. We admire what you're doing.
Yeah, we're trying.
You're trying. So Elena, you have a real life pivot very close to home. So tell us what business it was your husband's business, really, right?
Yeah, so my husband, he co-owns a restaurant as well as a food truck. So the food truck started a few years ago, and then we opened the restaurant back in November. So pretty new. It's all pizza. So we have stone brick oven pizza, super fast, really family friendly.
Okay. So you said the restaurant opened in November. That was very exciting. But boy, you did not get long out of that restaurant before people couldn't go anymore.
No, it was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm sure
we did I think it was like mid-March when we did the stay in place orders here in Oklahoma. So at that time, you couldn't do dine in or anything else. So it was mostly curbside and carry out at that point.
Okay. So were you doing curbside and carry out from your brick and mortar?
I mean, we were doing a little bit of carry out, but mostly it was all dine in because it's one of those places where it's like a food court. So people would bring their families, they'd hang out. One person would go to the bar, another person would leave their kids at our restaurant. So it was just like, of course they were older kids, but it was a very family friendly like destination. And so with that, we weren't doing a ton of carry out, and we had just started a little bit of the third party delivery services. So we weren't really doing a whole lot of that. And even the website wasn't really where it should have been.
So tell me about this because I've been curious. I've noticed more and more restaurants appearing on the like DoorDash and Postmates and all that. Was that hard to get
Mhm.
set up with if
No,
somebody
it
wanted to
wasn't
do that?
hard. I think the big thing is that there are some fees associated with it, and there's kind of a timeline that you have to wait for applications to be processed and everything to come up online. So it's kind of a business decision more than it is a technical decision, if anything.
Got it. Okay. So I guess then the decision would be like, do you want to just do curbside pickup if that's allowed, or hire your own
hmm
delivery, go with third
hmm
party? Okay. All right. So tell me then, you already kind of gave it away when you said that you had the food truck before. So what was the
hmm
thinking process and what did you do next?
Yeah, so when I guess it was around the time that our kids started staying home, and my kids love to go out to eat, and we started thinking, what is it that we can do now? And being that our kind of restaurant and everything else is really kind of that family vibe, and people were keeping their kids home all the time, we decided to start going to neighborhoods with the food truck. So dusted the food truck back off and started taking it to neighborhoods. And I think the way that we got started with it is I actually was just posting the idea to a few of the community Facebook groups here in Oklahoma City and in Edmond, because all of these mothers were kind of dealing with the same thing. Like, what am I going to do with my children? And I think there's this other component to it too that you touched on a little bit, and that's that there's this real kind of rallying around small business right now, and people
Mm-hmm.
really want to help small businesses and they really want to help their friends. And so I was just blown away with as much as the community was really there to support us and how excited people were to like book us to come out to visit their neighborhoods. It was a chance for the kids to get a walk. We put in kind of social distancing, but I think the big thing that really surprised us that will carry with us is how much people want to see you succeed in this. And so that really helped us quite a bit in terms of like, my friends were reaching out saying, hey, I want you guys to come to our neighborhood. They were sharing posts. I was posting in a lot of the Facebook groups. And so I think that we got really lucky and we've been really fortunate in this. But it's such a hard thing to have a business, and I really undervalued that component of it, that people are there for you too.
So
Yeah,
how
I
do you?
don't think it's luck, Elena. You're selling yourself short, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if
Well,
people didn't know you, didn't know your business, you didn't have those relationships, they wouldn't care if you succeeded or
Right.
failed, right? I mean, there is some goodwill towards the community in general, but you and your family have built this relationship with the community, and it's paying off now.
mhm.
So how do you decide
Yeah,
where?
and
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump on
go
you.
ahead.
I was going to say, how do you
No.
decide like where to go? Just, I mean, I know because there's a lot of people, small business, thinking maybe I could copy that model or do, how do you,
Mhm.
how did you figure out which areas to go? And now do you have certain schedules that you keep now that you go to all during the week?
Yeah, so what we did was first thing we did was hop on the website and create a form for people to
Mm,
sign up. That way we're not having to do the back and forth via email all the time, because it was mostly like myself and the other co-owner's wife, and we both have full-time jobs. So we beefed up our website and sent out a form for people to fill out if they wanted us to come to their neighborhood. But the thing that we did was that we tried to stick in communities that are close to the restaurant, because
mm,
I know that when things pick up and people are able to go back, then those people are going to be more likely to like to go to the restaurant
right.
after this whole
Yeah,
thing is over.
smart.
So we're trying to build it to where like we come out in a better spot than we went in. And I know that that's not always going to be the case for everybody, but that's paid off pretty well for us.
That's great
Really
advice.
smart. There's I did something I never thought I would do, and I ordered ice cream to be delivered to my house. So I know it sounds silly, but it's a local ice cream company. They make their ice cream there. It's called Boom Pilates, and they do a really great job. And they have done since the new ownership took place of going on Instagram and just talking about their ice cream, showing them making it. And now they're saying, okay, we're going to be in Porter's Neck on Thursday. We're going to be in Carolina Beach on Tuesday. So you know exactly when you can order and what flavors they have. It's just really smart. And I do want to support them because they're
Right.
local and they're nice, and well, also their ice cream is amazing.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think it's just every dollar that you spend with these local businesses really stays within the community as much as we can keep it. So I think the more that you can support, the better. And so people are trying to
So
do
buy
that
more
right now.
ice cream is what you're saying. Buy more pizza and buy more
More,
ice cream.
more ice
Save.
cream, more coffee. Yeah, all of that.
I'm so
Save
hungry.
the local community. I know. I'm sorry. You know, this show, you know, usually we talk about Pinterest and that's why we get hungry, but this is a new one. So
Yeah, I could go for that pizza. Sounds amazing. So we have gone past our time, but Elena, thank you
we
so much
have.
for your
Yes,
success
thank
story.
you,
It's
Elena.
awesome. I think that's
Oh, thanks for having me.
and the whole thing about community and coming out better than you had before. I think Danny talked about this a couple, like maybe the last time he was on, that like Facebook and Uber and all these places were started in the last recession. And so the companies and businesses that can pivot and pivot smartly, like you had mentioned, making sure that you're doing it in a community that can, after it's over, they'll remember you and come back, being really smart about pivoting. So I think we've had some great examples and some great lessons today. And Alisa, I'll let you have the last word.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
It always happens.
Last time you didn't. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So we had a lot of great pivots. We're gonna go through the questions and answer as many as we can, but please do get that downloadable worksheet because it will take you through that framework. And there may be a solution that you hadn't even thought of that will pop up in that process. So that's how we did it. Because I don't have a salon. I had to go through the framework and figure out how we pivot, and I'm hoping it will be helpful to you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.